The hallway is quiet. Too quiet for a house that was supposed to feel like home. A small pair of shoes waits by the door, untied, untouched. The clock ticks, slow and heavy, like it's counting the seconds of a promise that was never kept. You listen for footsteps that never come. You rehearse what you'll say when they finally walk in. But the words dry up in your throat because you already know how this ends. No one's coming. And somehow, it still hurts every time. You learn to sit still, to stay small. You stop asking for stories before bed. You stop asking, period. Because when love is something you have to earn, silence becomes survival. And the world doesn't see it. Because there are no bruises, no shouting, no broken glass. Just the echo of a child waiting for someone to notice. You grew up, but the child in you never stopped waiting. Love, in its purest form, is supposed to be the soil we grow from. It teaches you safety, that the world is not a place to fear. It teaches you self-worth, that your existence alone is enough reason to be held. And it teaches you connection, that your voice matters, that your tears are seen, that your laughter has somewhere to land. In a healthy home, love is not a transaction. It's the quiet rhythm beneath everything, the soft "I see you," that anchors a child's nervous system to peace. That's how secure attachment is formed, when care feels predictable, when warmth feels safe to return to. It's what lets a child explore the world without thinking it will collapse the moment they step away. But not everyone learns love that way. Some children grow up in emotional famine, where affection is currency, validation is rationed, and approval must be earned. You might remember it as stillness, a living room filled with voices, but none speaking to you. Smiles that came only after achievement. Affection that felt conditional, like a test you didn't remember signing up for. There's a term psychologists use, emotional starvation. It's not abuse you can point to. It's the ache of what never happened. The hug that didn't come. The words that weren't said. The warmth withheld not out of cruelty, but habit. Passed down like an heirloom of silence. And so your attachment to love becomes complicated. If you rarely received comfort, you might grow avoidant, convincing yourself you don't need anyone. If it came inconsistently, you might become anxious, forever chasing reassurance that never feels enough. And if it came mixed with fear, love one moment, rejection the next. Your heart learns the disorganized rhythm of confusion, craving closeness, fearing it at the same time. None of it looks dramatic from the outside. You could have a picture-perfect childhood, birthdays, grades, family photos. But the absence lingers between the frames, quiet as dust on glass. Because what breaks you isn't always what happens. Sometimes it's what never did. And so you grow up thinking love is something to decode, earn, or chase. You mistake attention for affection, performance for worth. You carry the invisible inheritance of those early rooms, where silence was safer than need. At some point, the child inside you made a quiet decision. If love isn't coming, I'll stop waiting for it. That's how survival begins. Not with rebellion, but withdrawal. You start swallowing every unmet need until your body learns to hold them like secrets. You laugh when you're supposed to. You nod when you're praised. You learn to become whatever keeps the peace. Because peace, even false peace, feels safer than rejection. When no one teaches you how to express emotion safely, your system finds another way, emotional suppression. It's not that you don't feel, it's that feeling has consequences. Every tear feels dangerous. Every need feels shameful. So you bury them, deep, until numbness becomes your armor. You learn the language of self-reliance far too early. You become the caretaker, the achiever, the quiet one. Teachers love you. Adults trust you. But no one sees the exhaustion behind your composure. Because somewhere between childhood and survival, you confused control with safety. This is how hyper-independence is born. The belief that needing nothing is the only way to avoid being hurt again. You build walls out of competence. You build identities out of doing. You become everything for everyone except held. Perfectionism soon follows. If love never came freely, maybe it can be earned through flawlessness. Every grade, every task, Every performance becomes a plea disguised as excellence. Will you see me now? Will you stay if I'm perfect? But perfection has no finish line. It only deepens the distance between who you are and who you think you must be. Psychologists call this adaptive functioning, the nervous system's way of protecting you by suppressing what once got you hurt. But the cost is emotional anesthesia. You stop feeling sadness, but joy dims too. You learn to analyze everything but trust nothing. And slowly, you forget what softness feels like, both in others and within yourself. And here's the cruel irony. The more you prove you can handle everything alone, the less anyone thinks to offer help. Your competence becomes your camouflage. People call you strong, unaware that strength was never a choice, it was a consequence. You spend years convincing yourself you're fine, that you don't need anyone. But late at night, when the distractions fade, the silence hums with a familiar ache. A reminder that the child who stopped needing never stopped wanting. You can build a life around self-control, but the body still remembers what it longed for, because no matter how deep you bury it, the need for love doesn't die. It just hides. You grow up believing you've outrun it, that what happened in childhood stayed there. You build a life, a career, maybe even a relationship. You smile in photos, give good advice, keep everything under control. But the wound didn't vanish. It simply learned to dress like adulthood. Now, it hides behind your calm tone when someone gets too close. It shows up in the pause before you say "I love you," as if the words might break something fragile. It lingers in the way you pull away first, not because you don't care, but because you care too much. This is what psychologists call attachment reenactment. It's the unconscious urge to repeat what's familiar, even if it hurt, because the mind equates predictability with safety. So you find yourself drawn to people who mirror what you grew up with. Distant, inconsistent, unavailable. Not because you want to suffer, but because some part of you still believes, if I can make them love me, I'll finally undo the past. That's why you mistake tension for passion, silence for peace, and withdrawal for independence. You say you want intimacy, but when someone offers it, your body stiffens. Your nervous system doesn't trust what it never learned to feel safe with. That's emotional dysregulation, when affection feels like danger, and love feels like exposure. You don't chase love. You chase proof that you were worth loving all along. And the cruel part, even when someone does love you, it doesn't land. It hits the surface, like rain on stone, because the child inside still believes, I'm unworthy of warmth. So you build walls disguised as standards. You keep people at a polite distance, calling it boundaries. You leave first, calling it self-respect. But deep down, you're just protecting the ghost, the version of you that waited by the door too long. Love, for you, becomes a paradox. You crave it desperately, but the moment it arrives, panic floods in. Because to let someone love you now means letting them see how unloved you once felt. You become both the seeker and the saboteur, longing for connection, but terrified of what it might awaken. The adult wears confidence like armor, but the inner child still hides underneath, whispering the same old prayer. Please don't leave, but please don't come too close. And that's the quiet tragedy of growing up without love. You learn how to survive without it, but not how to receive it. Even when the mind forgets, the body remembers. It remembers the nights you held your breath through arguments. It remembers the tension in your jaw, the stiffness in your shoulders, the heartbeat that never learned what safety feels like. You may not recall the moment love turned uncertain, but your nervous system does. It learned to live in hypervigilance, scanning every silence for threat, every tone for danger. That's why peace feels suspicious now. Why calm makes you restless. Because when your body spends years in survival, relaxation feels like a trick. Psychiatrist Bessel van der Kolk wrote, "The body keeps the score." And it does. You can silence your memories, intellectualize your past, even rewrite your story. But your pulse, your muscles, your breath still carry the archive. Anxiety, burnout, insomnia that feels like punishment for being still. They're not random symptoms. They're your body's language for unprocessed pain. For some, it manifests as chronic exhaustion. For others, as emotional numbness, a dull fog where joy should be. You tell yourself you're just tired, but what you're really feeling is the cost of decades spent holding everything in. This is the paradox of trauma born from absence. You spend your life appearing functional, even thriving, the job, the achievements, the mask that never cracks. But inside, there's a quiet void that success can't touch, because you learned how to perform competence, not how to feel safe. Heartfelt call it somatic dissonance, when your mind says I'm fine, but your body still whispers I'm not. And it's in that dissonance that many people stay stuck, endlessly chasing external proof of worth, while their inner world pleads for stillness. You can outrun memories, but not sensations. You can talk about trauma for years, but until your body believes it's over, you're still living inside it. Heartfelt, because the wound doesn't ask for attention. It asks for recognition. It doesn't want you to fix it. It just wants you to finally say, I see you, you're real, and you don't have to protect me anymore. Here's the truth that takes most people years to believe. You were never unlovable. You were simply untouched by love long enough to forget your own warmth. The absence of affection doesn't erase your capacity to give or receive it. It only buries it under layers of survival. But what was buried can be uncovered. What was delayed can still arrive. Healing begins the moment you stop chasing love outward and start learning how to give it inward. That's what reparenting really means. Not pretending the past didn't hurt, but becoming the adult your younger self needed. It's sitting with your own sadness instead of shaming it. It's saying, I'm here now, when no one else ever did. Therapy, journaling, stillness, they aren't about fixing you. They're about introducing you to yourself again. The parts that went silent, the emotions you disowned, the tenderness you buried, all waiting patiently to be invited back. Love isn't a single relationship or a childhood privilege. It's a skill you can still learn. Through safe people who stay. Through boundaries that don't punish, but protect. Through self-compassion that speaks gently where criticism once lived. The journey isn't about rewriting your past. It's about reclaiming what the past made you forget. That love was never meant to be earned. It was always meant to be received. And one day, without fanfare or fireworks, something shifts. You'll catch yourself smiling at nothing. You'll rest without guilt. You'll stop performing and start existing. That's not weakness. That's love returning home. Not from someone else, but from the parts of you that finally learned how to stay. Because love wasn't lost. It was delayed. And now, it's arriving. Right on time. Healing doesn't arrive with thunder. It comes quietly. In the mornings, you no longer dread. In the way your breath softens before sleep. You begin to notice that peace isn't loud. It hums. It lives in the pauses you once tried to fill. You start journaling, not to make sense of everything, but to give your pain somewhere to live outside your body. You speak to the child you once were, the one who waited by the door. You tell them, you can open it now, they're not coming, but I am. This is integration, the moment your past stops being an enemy and becomes a teacher. You let yourself feel what was never safe to feel. You cry without apologizing. You forgive, not to excuse them, but to release yourself from the endless replay of what never changed. Stillness becomes sacred. Vulnerability becomes strength. And the emptiness that once terrified you becomes spacious, a place where love can finally breathe. You learn to hold your own hand. You ask for help without shame. You let people see you, not the version you built to survive. And slowly, the echo fades. Not because the past disappears, but because the adult you've become finally learned how to answer it. You're not the unloved child anymore. You're the one who stayed, who listened, who came back for them. And maybe that's what healing truly is. Not erasing what hurt you, but becoming the person who can finally love you the way they couldn't. If no one said it then, let this be the first time someone does. You were never too much to love. You were simply never loved enough by the ones who should have known how. It's heartfelt. What you went through doesn't make you broken, it makes you human. And healing isn't about forgetting, it's about remembering that your story still deserves gentleness. So if these words found you at the right moment, pause, breathe, let them land. Because for once, you don't have to earn love, you just have to let it in. Hopeful, you weren't unloved, you were unseen. And now, You see yourself clearly, wholly, finally. If this spoke to something buried in you, stay with us. Subscribe, not for algorithms or numbers, but because healing starts with understanding. And every story we tell here is another way of saying, you're not alone. So here's your reminder, simple, quiet, and real. You are loved, even if you had to come here to hear it.